Hello and thanks for coming to this channel. As I promised, I'm here with the new concept of Active Directory. So in the previous session, we recorded or we touched a little bit about the Active Directory, like what is the Active Directory and how it works. I tried explaining a little bit about the Azure AD and the hybrid environment as well, that every organization is using that concept or that type of environment or structure in the environment, in the organization. So in this recording session, I would be covering the a component of core component of Active Directory when uh, and that would be helpful for you to understand the structuring of the overall Active Directory. So when I say structure, so Active Directory consists of two structural component. The first one is logical structure and the physical structure. So whenever we configure or promote any Active Directory, suppose you are the architect, I know like it takes lot years of experience to reach to that milestone, but there is nothing impossible, right? If you are the beginner, you must be in L1 profile, L2 profile, and if you are expert, then you must be in L3 profile. So from L3 to architect is not much distance, but still there are a lot to do. I'm somehow I'm trying to help you people to reach to that point, to reach to that stage where you can uh, you know do a bit more preparation to get the architect job. So when I'm saying Active Directory consists of two structural component, means the logical and physical structure. So in logical and physical structure, what other components come into these two structure? The logical in logical structure, we have forest. Forest is nothing but it's a security boundary. It's a logical security boundary of the environment. So suppose this is my forest. This is my FQDN or domain. We called root.com, or you can mention like this. Contoso. It's very popular. Contoso.com. So Contoso.com is a forest, and this is the logical security boundary for all of the user in all of the objects in the environment. I would be covering the forest more in the upcoming sessions, but for now, just it is better to know like what is forest. So I would be digging into the forest, trees, and domain in the later sessions. And then we have domain trees. What is the domain tree? Okay, the question would be like, what is the domain tree? So suppose I'll try to explain like this way in a practical manner. So suppose this is your main domain controller. I mean the forest domain controller, which is contoso.com. Okay, and there is one, you know, there is a requirement, like your manager come to you and says like, hey, we wanted to have a different we are opening the different business or different type of business within this organization, but the requirement is that we don't want to use contoso.com, our forest domain, because forest domain is just for our senior or VVIP users, like directors, CEOs, or some other senior people in the organization. So what we can do to have a different identity which comes under comes under the same forest, contoso.com. I mean the management would be like if if you can think of like this, so if your contoso.com root is in India, okay, and you have administrator sitting in India. Sorry, India, all right. And this one you're planning to promote or planning to configure in the UK. So if this would, I mean, suppose if you configure the separate forest in UK, then you must be, you should hire, I mean, you must hire the people who can manage this UK forest domain controller. And if you have 10 user or 20 user or 30 user, so it is really I mean, would be really expensive for that organization to hire a administrator who would be very good, technical, I would say proficient technical to manage all the Active Directory, because if you know Active Directory, uh, you would definitely paying paid for good money, right? So every organization, before they hire any candidate, they just think of structuring and how they can how they can cut off the budget, how they can uh, you know uh, they can uh, uh, you know uh, uh, think, I mean, do something on the budget itself. So it's very important, like you must be very oftenly hearing that company is uh, doing the cost cutting. So it is like a kind of a cost cutting. And also, if you do not want to have a different identity, then why we go and create the forest in the UK? So the benefit would be is like creating main forest in India and the tree domain in the UK. So let me explain first like what is tree, then you would be able to understand this better. So tree is nothing but it's a collection of domain controllers. You got my point, right, guys? It's a collection of domain controller. So when I'm saying it's a collection of domain controller, means uh, you can think, you can see this art, you can see this structure, right? So we have forest as in Contoso, and then we have UK as in tree child. So there is two concept when we promote any different identity within the same forest. So the first one we called child domain, and the second one we promote the tree domain. So what is different between these two? So these two are almost uh, you know they are very similar. These two are very similar, but the child domain, when we promote the child domain, correct? Suppose we are promoting the child domain for the contoso.com. So suppose we are promoting a child for our partners or for some XYZ company. I mean for XYZ department in the other country. So how it would be, how it looks like. So I mean XYZ dot contoso.com. So if you're creating the child, your child would be using the last digit, or I would say the FQDN of your forest domain. Okay. So the child domain controller, let me repeat this again for you. So child domain controller, when we promote the child domain controller, it uses the FQDN of the root domain in the end of your child domain name. So like you creating for mailing, like you're creating child server for mailing. Okay, so you're putting the name, first name would be based upon the requirement or based upon uh, uh, the business, or it could be based upon the department that you are trying to, I mean, you wanted to configure. The first visit would be like for mail, and then you have to just mention the condoso.com. So this way you would be able to configure the child. But what if tree? So there is no as such requirement for tree, though you would be creating that under the main forest. But while promoting the child domain controller, there is no necessary or mandatory to put this, FQDN of your forest in the end of your NetBIOS name. So if you wanted to configure like this, mail dot, or you can just type it like this. So if you wanted to configure the google.com without using the FQDN of your parent, I mean your root domain, you can easily be able to promote it. Okay, so I hope that child and tree is pretty much clear for you guys. If you have any doubt, just post it in my comment. I would I mean, as I mentioned, as and when I get time to review the comment, I will definitely go there and answer those questions to you guys. So, you know, then next is domain. So, as I mentioned, these we call domain, right? The child we create under the forest or root. So these are the domain controller. I mean domain, not a domain controller. So suppose if you have, I'll give some example like this. So you have these two childs, or you can add one more child over here. So okay, so you have three child under the contoso.com. So what are the, I mean, so in that case, I will tell you like what is domain. So this is your forest domain. I mean your forest root domain controller, and later to that you have three domain controller, three identity or the child domain controller that we call domain in the environment, in the forest or within the forest. So these are the domain. Okay. So let's come to the organization unit. So organization unit is a kind of a boundary for the objects. I mean, let me draw this that in real quick. So how I could do that? So it's OU. Suppose you open the Active Directory domain and you domain users in computer, and there is a requirement like you have IT department, you have account department, and you have VVIP department, VVIP users. So if there is no, I mean, Microsoft has not introduced any such concept, then what if, I mean, if you wanted to apply some different group policy for these three department, so how would you do that? So OU does the life, easier for the administrators, because in OU, if we create OU, then we can have the different policy linked to these OU. Means if I create a department wise like IT OU, and then we have account OU, and then we have VVIP OU, VVIP OU. All right, so you can see this. So you have department wise, OU created. So it's a logical structuring of the user in the environment. And if you create OU, right, then you could link the different group policy according to the department requirement. So in this, I'll explain a bit more about it. So like in ITOU, you wanted to some restrictions for, or you wanted to have some Default page for IE. You would like to configure default page for IE, for IT, and for account. Again, the default page. All right. So default page you would like to, you wanted to configure for IT account and VVIP user. So you can create the OU separately, move the users to these OU, like the IT users in the IT OU, account user in the account OU, and VVIP users into the VVIP OU. And then you create the group policy and link to them uh, according to the department wise. So if there is a different page, i.e. default page configured for IT, so whatever the user or whosoever is into this OU, they would be getting that web IE default page accordingly, and then same goes to the account and same goes to the VVIP. So here I'm not talking only about the IE, but yeah, it could be any group policy that you wanted to apply separately or dedicatedly to that OU. So in the domain controller, this OU would be a, a boundary, or it's a compartment for the specific department wise. So you can create multiple user and add those user to these groups. So OU, so that you could have a different policy in place and implement those policy to this specific user whosoever are into this OU. So hope I'm able to explain it. Then we have objects. So as I mentioned, whatever the whatever the things we create in Active Directory or we have in Active Directory, those we called objects. Like user is object, computer is object, group is object, OU is object. So each and every, all attributes are the object. So um, each and everything that we have in Active Directory we called objects. We manage them as an object. So hope that is clear. And let me move to the site domain control as part of physical structure. So site, that's very important, and in the separate lecture I would be covering the intra-site replication, sites and subnet, inter-site replications, and what are the protocol is being used, or what are the flexibility we have to configure, how we create the site link, what is the bridgehead server, what is the ISTG, KCC. It's a kind of Bhagavad Gita, where we have lot of information. Even in Active Directory we have different expertise. If you go out in the organization, like in Microsoft or some other organization, you would see like some guy is on the SME in authentication, some guy is the SME in replication. So based upon that, for each and every component they have the SME SME people who just is having expertise on that particular component in Active Directory. So we have site, we have domain controller, and these two are the part of physical structure. So sites is nothing but in Active Directory, as we know, like Active Directory using the multi-master replication topology. So sites is very important because if you have a multiple domain controller, then your one domain controller information is required to replicate to another domain controller in another domain controller database. So it is very important, and that is why sites comes into the picture, because site and services, we can structure our overall Active Directory replication based upon the location wherever you have a domain controller or you're planning to have your domain controller. And domain controller we all know, right? So domain controller is someone who just manage everything, who just having everything in the environment means whenever we promote any domain controller, that as soon as you install the Active Directory, that machine become a domain controller in the environment. So these three component, logical physical structure, I have been you know tried to explain each and everything about it. If you have still any doubt, you can put those doubt on in a comment, so I would be answering those questions. So uh, let me let me open my lab real quick so that you can be a you know familiar with the Active Directory. So I have Max DC, and then I have Contoso DC1. So let me start the virtual machine. So I have last time I just hard booted this machine. I forcefully shut down this machine, and that is why I was getting that two options. So sorry, this is not the one which I'm looking for. So let me power up this machine real quick. So just for the training purposes, okay, I promoted or I have a mixed environment where I have server 2008 and server 2012. So server 2008, the reason why I did it, because uh, like that way I would be able to show you like how you can raise your function level, and that is why I have a mixed environment where I have server 2012 operating system and server 2008 as an additional domain controller. So in additional domain controller, as we all know, I would be explaining that in a separate session, like what is the forest domain, domain forest, I mean forest function level and domain function level. I would be explaining that in a separate session. But uh, just for you, I mean at this time you just know like if you have uh, I can let me draw that so that you could understand that better. So suppose you have mixed environment, like you have server 2003, server 2008, server 2012, or you can see like this, you have server 2008 R2 or server 2012 R2. So if your domain function label, domain functional label set to 2008 R2, then I mean server 2012 you would be able to promote. However, you won't not be be able to promote any uh, I mean any previous windows. When I'm saying previous window means server 2003. If your forest function level is set to server 2008, means you can you could promote the servers irrespective. I mean you could promote the domain controllers to the later operating system. I mean later operating system. When I'm saying later operating system means if you have a server 2008 R2 in the environment, then you can, and your function level domain DA function level and your FA function level is set to server 2008 R2, means you would be able to run the server 2008 or above in the environment. If you have any server which is server 2003, then and your forest function level is set to server 2008 R2, so that server will not be replicating to the other domain controller. That would be become a zombie server in the environment. So that is recommended by Microsoft to to you know think of about the forest function level and the features. If you're using the latest of forest function level and domain function level, you're having a great feature enhanced from past years. Like in server 2008 R2, we got we got uh, you know FGPP. Let me type it here. FGPP, fine grained password policy. I will explaining that in a separate session. So, oh, it's still taking time. So it seems like server 2008 was just updating. So let's give it another 1 minute. Let me go. Let me jump into that slide 1 second. So HGPP is new feature which has been introduced in the server 2008 2 function label. So if you're running server 2003 function label or domain function label, you won't be utilizing this. You won't be able to utilize this feature. So every operating system comes with that that operating system forest function level and domain function level. But what happened, like if you're running the organization, right, and if you're using server 2008 for thousands of domain controller, so it's not something that if Microsoft has been introduced server 2012, so I mean overnight you would be able to migrate everything in server 2012 R2, because a lot of application dependencies are in the schema. So when just try to explain a bit about the schema as well, because it's very important. So whenever we promote any domain controller in the environment, it run the domain prep and forest prep just to update the schema. So it is very important to check with the application team owner if there is any dependency in the schema. Otherwise, you end up with having a lot of issue with your application. So it is always better to have a better planning. It is always great to have a better planning when you promote any domain controller or introduce any new domain controller in the environment. So the steps are very easy, right? Steps are very easy. Like nothing to do, but parallelly you can install. Let me show you that real quick. How you could do that. So suppose you have existing domain controller running all the domain controller in server 2003, and you're certainly planning to migrate all of them to server 2008 R2. So what you can do is like you just introduce one domain controller parallelly as in server 2008 R2. Okay, while the promotion, it does automatically run the domain prep and forest prep. So it just has to update the match the schema. So there is a one registry key where you can go and check the voice schema version. So domain prep and forest prep is just uh, you know increase the schema version to be compatible with this operating system. And later, I mean, slowly side like you have 10 domain controllers, so you can promote one domain controller as a additional domain controller. You can demote one domain controller to that particular site, and later you promote another domain controller, server 2008 R2 domain controller, and then you can demote the another domain controller, with server 2003 domain controller. So like this way, parallelly you can you know decommission the existing domain controller and introduce the new domain controller. And when you have done with this stuff, I mean, all of the domain controller have been migrated to the server 2008 R2, then you can probably think of raising the function level, like domain function level and forest function level. But again, just keep in mind that before doing any domain or forest wise changes, you always check with your relevant application team to just have a bit understanding, like if there is no dependency at all on the application layer, because once you raise or change the function level, you won't be able to reverse. And that is something like you're doing the changes, and later if there is any problem occurs in the environment, you won't be able to reverse them back. So it is always it's crucial, right? If you're running the environment and you have 1,000 or 2,000 of domain controllers, and certainly you must have application which are running on premises, multiple application, database, everything coming to the Active Directory for the authentication. And certainly, if there is a problem occurs, right? If there is a problem comes, then uh, it will be very tough for you to identify the exact cause and troubleshoot, because you won't be able to see. I've seen a lot of changes in the environment which comes for application perspective or some other perspective, but in those changes, right, it has been clearly mentioned, like if the plan A will not work, then we have a plan for rollback as well. I mean, whatever the changes we do, we'll reverse them back. But that thing is not same with the Active Directory functional labels. It's a one-time changes. Like if you done the changes, that means you have done the changes. You won't be able to reverse them up. So just keep in mind, guys. So my domain controller is up. So let me type the password here. Okay. So you can see my domain controller name is contoso.com. Okay. Perfect. So so let me open the dsa.msc. MSc. So dsa.msc is very old tool that we are using to open the Active Directory domain and users. You can either click on the start and search for domain Active Directory domain users and computers. So I promised you to show the OUs. So you can see here. Let me make a little bit big for you. So suppose you have a user test and Vivek for the accounts, and another user you have for the I mean another user you have for, I mean VVIP users you have Ravi, and then you have Kumar. So let me create that user real quick. So in next video, I would be helping you with the promotion of DC, like how we promote the DC, how we create the child domain controller, tree domain controller. So finish. So these three users we have at the moment. So how we can link a policy separately for these users. In organization, there would be user, I mean more than one users for each and every department. So you have nothing to do. You have just right click on the contoso of your domain controller, domain name, and then click on new, and then we have organization unit. So here I'll type accounts. So we have accounts, and then I'll move it here, I'll go to test because test is a domain, account user. I'll right click move and then I'll go to accounts. Uh, okay, accounts. So you can see here, click. So now your test user is in account OU. Then another user, another organization unit, which is ID administrator, or let's simply type IT and then go to test app, and Vivek is the IT user. So let me move Vivek into the IT and then go to organization unit and type VVIP, VVIP, and then we have VVIP users. So go here and move Ravi Kumar to this VVIP OU. So, Ravi Kumar have been, all three users have been appropriately moved to their home OUs, right? And I'll show you the magic, like why I did it and why Microsoft had done this thing for administrator. So let me open the gpmc.msc. This is short for, it's a short command that we use to open the group policy management console. So group policy management console is a console which help you to apply the different policy. So if I go here under the, one second. Uh, so IT and test, sorry. So it's Contoso accounts. We have accounts OU, we have IT OU, and then we have VVIP OU. So I I just for your information, kind information, like whenever we create any group policy in the environment, right? We always go to this group policy object first, create it here, because if you're directly applying creating this policy, you can create the policy here as well. Since it's a test environment, I can do that, but let me walk you through the exact way of doing it. So group policy, click on new, and then we have IE settings, correct? So we have IE settings, or we can rename it like this, accounts. Okay, so we have IE setting for accounts. Let's go to this edit option, and suppose if I go here under the policies, administrative templates, labs control panel, personalizations. So though I've created the policy for IE, but for just for the example, I'm configuring the do not display the lock screen. If I click on enable, apply, and this policy have been implemented, if I'll go to the settings, right, I would be able to see that policy is being configured over here. You can look, and if you wanted to read about this group policy, you just click over that policy and you would be able to see everything is being mentioned and explained about that policy. So what I need to do now is, like, I need to click here on the OU, link an existing OU, and then I'll click IE settings for accounts, click. So you can see the group policy is now being linked to this OU. But what if I go to the IT and VVIP? We still don't have any group policy in it. The only policy coming or inheriting from the top level, the default domain controller policy, right? The default domain controller policy is inheriting from the root, I would say from the parent, because it's linked to direct to this domain controller name. So any policy that you wanted to apply for all, you can either, you can either go ahead and link that policy. Uh, if you wanted to apply any policy for all of the users, so either you go one by one all the in all the OU and right click and link click on link an existing group policy, or you directly, if that policy is for the entire user of machines, then you can go directly here and link an existing policy and just choose appropriate group policy and click OK. That policy would be apply, and that policy will be inherited to all of the user. So the group policy part, I would be covering, in more deeper with the troubleshooting part, and how we analyze the events for that particular issue. If there is any issue, like what is the RSOP group policy result, how we analyze the result, and how we do the GPSVC analysis. So I would be covering that in this separate session. So this is all about the today's video, and let me promise you again that I would be coming with the new recording session tomorrow. In that tomorrow session, I would be showing you, I would be helping you with the like how to promote Active Directory. I would be explaining each and everything of the Active Directory. So like domain prep and forest prep, I would be showing you each and everything in that particular video. And if and there will be some troubleshooting part as well, like if you're unable to promote the domain controller, so what logs to be refer and how to troubleshoot that, if any. I would be touching a little bit about the domain join issue as well, like if you're in the environment and if you're joining to the domain, I mean any machine to the domain controller, and if you're getting any error, so what type of logs you can refer in the machine itself to identify the exact cause. And yeah, and a bit I would be helping you with the network monitor tool as well, so that you could be more familiar, because in the further session I would be using the monitoring tool to analyze the transmission of the packet, of the exact flow of the authentication and replication. So it will be a kind of you will be very much familiar until that time. So I'll show you that tool as well. So thank you very much for your time to comes in came into this lecture. And again, if you have any doubt, any confusion, you put that into the comment, or you can mail me as well. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you would be able to see my email address. So you can mail me the appropriate question you have, and then accordingly I will answer you those questions. Thank you, and once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Have a great day ahead. We'll see you tomorrow with the new concept of Active Directory and troubleshootings. Thank you very much, everybody. Cheers.